Hey, good morning, guys. It's night time as I record this, but I know you'll be watching in the morning, so just wanted to say I enjoyed everybody's paper presentations last week, the three we saw, and I just want to kind of talk about my paper a little bit tonight. I really looked at the topic of church membership, but more specifically, church membership, small churches versus larger churches. When I say large church or small church, I mean really 200 or under, but really closer to probably about 125 average on in worship Sunday service on Sunday morning. It's about what I had in mind when writing the paper, and I felt there was a difference there. And the reason that this topic kind of stood out to me, I definitely wanted to write on church membership, but I was also I wanted to do something that was going to be an interest to me, but also beneficial for me too, and to be able to invest my time into. And this is one because for about the past 3 months, just over 3 months now, been a pastor of a church here in Tennessee for of a church we average about 175 on a really good Sunday, and like I said, it could it could kind of vary, if there's a virus going through the community or neighborhood there, or maybe it's just cold season. You could have a third of your church out on any given Sunday, or if it's close to Christmas, people are out visiting and stuff, and that changes. And I think a lot of times the bigger churches aren't as affected by this, but if they are, it just doesn't cover it up. I mean, I'm sure if it's a church of 2,000 people and a third of their guys were, normal church members or attenders were gone, it definitely stand out if you had a few hundred people, but when you only have a couple of families that are gone, it does make up a third. But it makes a huge difference. It's definitely there, and so I just wanted to look at church membership, specifically, kind of in a small church. It was kind of tough at times to write the paper because I was. There's a fine line there. I didn't want to get too much into just church membership on a broad scale. I really wanted to look at details of the small church and just really get specific and examine past the surface level and get past this broad spectrum that I know I really could write a lot about on. So it was just difficult to walk that line and not get too much into church membership in general, while trying to balance looking into church membership in a small church. And so I really wanted to start with a good solid foundation. So I started with the church and just looked at what the church was very briefly, and then I looked looked at it a little more. And I moved to church membership in general. So I moved from the church to church membership as I slowly moved my way to the very specifics that I wanted to talk about as far as church membership in small churches. So with the church, I looked at it, just what it was, and then the church membership just kind of in general looked at what the church membership was, what kind of made up church membership, and what was the biblical precedence for it. There's a lot of people who might look at the New Testament and say, well, I don't really see evidence of church membership there, and I guess if you want to overlook some things that might not just come out and say church membership, then I guess I could see that. But I see that there's real evidence and a real demand for church membership in the New Testament. I look at 1 Timothy chapter 5, and we see that there's a list of widows being kept. But we know that there's a list of something being kept. In this particular passage, it's widows. So we know that there's been something designated, a record to keep up with them. And I know this one's probably a little further out there, but it stood out to me is that God Himself keeps a record of those who follow Him in the book of life. We see that in Revelation. And I know someone might say, well, that probably isn't evidence of church membership. But we do see that in the Corinthian church, Paul assumed that there was a matter going on, and Paul assumed that there was a majority that was identified that would be able to vote on certain issues. So we must know that there was a group of people, at least in Paul's mind. he was assuming that there was a group that had been identified that would be able to vote, be able to speak for the rest of the members of the group. So I think that's a great evidence of what church membership is and kind of how we should do it. But I believe there should be a clear distinction, and I believe the Bible is clear on this, that there's a clear distinction between those who follow Christ and those who don't. So to be members of something, to be part of something. Now, I'm not saying that you should, as a Christian, you have to be a member of a church to also be a follower of Christ. No, I don't think anybody would be able to say that and back it up biblically. What I'm saying is that there's definitely a clear distinction between the two. And so I moved from church membership down to why, and I looked at the biblical precedents, but I looked at why church membership. And when I was looking in with why, I kind of had, like I said, that number of 125 regular in attendance and below. Kind of with my church in mind, so we might have 50 to 70, 75, and I wanted to start off, and I said, it's a command by God, as we just looked at, and I believe that that's where we kind of had to start. But from then, I wanted to look at what's the more practical side, what's the practical sense of why church membership, why is it important? Why is it something that we should really study and devote a lot of time to understanding and promoting within our churches? So I came up with some things, and for one, just education, to being able to grow spiritually, grow in Christian maturity. I believe that might be possible outside of the church, but I believe to be the most effective, to get the most out of it, and to grow in maturity to the best of what we're called to, I believe that you have to be part of a group. And I believe that's what church membership is for. There's a lot of different things that go into that as far as discipleship goes, and just having people to keep you accountable. Iron sharpens iron, and it's just that's the way it works. Church membership is, people depending on, when there's times of weakness, depending on that accountability, and I kind of just saw it, and I was looking at it more of a broader sense in this, and it provides fellowship. I think a lot of times we do a lot of fellowship, but I feel like we underestimate the power of fellowship and just the benefits that come from it. There's nothing that seems really special about fellowship other than just hanging out with fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, just as church family, and hanging out and being able to spend time with one another and share what's going on in each other's lives and just enjoying that time together. And I don't think that a lot of people will see that and place that up as a high priority, but in reality, when you look back after a time of fellowship, you say, I enjoyed it. I really needed that. So that's something that church membership provides, because if you're not going to be a member of a church and you're just kind of jumping around from church to church, or you're going to a church but you're not actually a member, and you're not part of the unity of that body and a voting member and everything the church membership provides, then you kind of miss out on that. And especially in a small church where everything seems to be basically like a family. I know in big churches a lot of times their focus is on casting a vision or providing programs to the community, and there's small churches that do that on a smaller scale. But in a smaller church, it really just comes down to relationships. Now, big churches, they definitely have to make relationships, or they wouldn't be able to be, like I said, it wouldn't be able to be considered big churches. But in a different sense, those small churches, relationships, that really all that matters. If you're going to a church that's probably 125 or smaller, most of the time you're going to that church because you either moved to that community or someone invited you. There's a lot of times where people who come to my church, and say, we heard that you're offering these programs, so we definitely want to be part of it. Now that might happen from time to time, but that's definitely rare. Most of the time it's, hey, this person invited us, and they were just telling us, about the church, and we just wanted to come check it out. And that's kind of different. That's one of the many differences between a large church and a small church. I'm not sure what kind of church that you guys have grown up in, or the ones you're part of now, but I've typically been small rural churches, and I think the biggest church that I was probably part of is the church that I grew up in. It's kind of grown. It was about 125. It's probably grown to 400 or 500 now, but from the end, I've probably been mainly part of small churches, so this has kind of been a big thing that I've been able to witness personally. So everything definitely seems like a big part of one big family. A lot of times, one family or two families make up, 75% of the church. Everybody's related, and you see that a lot in rural communities. And I believe that church membership is just even more important because of that intimate relationship and just how close small churches really are when big churches probably can't really provide that because um, just the vast numbers and being able to it's hard to make those relationships, build those relationships unless you're super intentional about it. But so I moved from the church and looking at church membership and the biblical precedents for it and just why. And then I got down to where I wanted to. My end goal was talking about church membership in a small church versus a large church. And like I said, casting a vision was a big thing for big churches as far as kind of like relationships in a big church. But church discipline is definitely one of the things that I wanted to look at as far as, you have to be, if someone's not a member of the church, you can't practice church discipline. At least not the way you're supposed to, the way you need to, as the Bible calls for. So, if you're going to be practicing church discipline, church membership is absolutely vital. And like this kind of goes back to, churches being small churches being a family. Everybody kind of knows everybody's business. That's just part of a small town, small community, small church reality. And you're part of that. And news travels fast. We know that. We know, it's kind of like news travels faster in a small community than it does anywhere around the world or anything. That's just how it is. Gossip is, and I think that just kind of adds to the necessity for church discipline because it seems like a sin that might be contained in a bigger church. All of a sudden, it spreads like wildfire in a small community because everybody knows everybody. Most of that might be their cousin or their brother-in-law or whatever it may be. That news travels fast, and a lot of people are affected. And because those churches are so different, they're so close as far as a body. A lot of times that provides an opportunity for people to really just be hurt more than someone they might not have a close relationship with. The people that hurt us the most are those that we are close with. And in a small church, if we're close to pretty much everybody, in the membership there, there's just a greater opportunity in a negative sense to be hurt. And so church discipline and church membership alike are absolutely, in my opinion, more important. I don't want it to put it to kind of pit big churches versus small churches. I definitely don't want to make that mistake because I don't believe that would accomplish anything. But I believe it's kind of more important in the sense that more people are going to be affected by that sin personally, on a personal level, in a small church. And I believe that church membership provides a great sense of unity in all churches, small or big, but especially in a small church. When everybody kind of knows, oh yeah, they go to that church, they go to the Methodist church, they go to the Assembly of God or Church of Christ. Well, those are the Baptists, and we got to beat the Methodists and to the restaurants and things. Everybody in a small town knows this, and so church membership is absolutely vital. And I believe in our culture we've kind of seen a shift in this. I'm not sure if it's been a slow movement towards this, but a lot of people don't want to be part of a group or a member of something. They'd rather be seen as an individual, and there's benefits to that. But I believe the Bible tells us that there's a great benefit as far as being part of the family of God, but being part of a local church body. I believe that's why we see a lot of times where you got millennials who maybe have went off to college, gotten married, having kids, and they're looking for a sense of community that they've never had before. And the church provides that. I think a lot of times that those churches provide that, and I think small churches provide that on a deeper level. Now I think a bigger church can provide that on a grander scale, but smaller churches with church membership can provide that on a deeper level, that community. And I've personally, been part of this and witnessed this when we moved to Texas and just being taken in by our church, and I feel like we wouldn't be able to say that with a church of maybe 500 or or even bigger, 1,000 or 2,000 people, I think you just kind of get lost in the crowd, and that's just the reality of it. I mean, there's great things that big churches do, but the thing I really wanted to focus on was just the small church and the big church. I didn't want to say one was better than the other, because I believe there's a lot of great small churches and there's a lot of great big churches, and there's some very unhealthy small churches and some very unhealthy big churches. So I just wanted to focus on something that was more um, personal to me as a pastor of a rural church, and this is just what something that I felt God lead me to do, and would see very beneficial. And I know there might be a lot of questions depending on the church that you grew up in, the size of the church, or maybe the one that you're at now. But I just felt that small churches are affected by church membership in a greater way. I think it affects their giving more. Um, there's a lot of people who will jump around and kind of, church hop, or whatever the term you want to put on it, and not be a member of that church. Just kind of test the waters at different churches and never really invest their time and their effort and whatever it is, just to build relationships in one church. And we see that all the time. And I think that happens a lot in small churches more than anything else. But I believe that small churches provide that sense of unity, that sense of fellowship and accountability through church membership that large churches just can't. And there's a lot of things that large churches, bigger churches can do that small churches probably can never even begin to do with different programs and ministries that they provide. But this is definitely something that was personal for me, and I enjoyed the study, and I feel like I probably could spend quite a bit more looking into this and just seeing the differences between the two, and the benefits of a small church and maybe the benefits of a large church. But I certainly enjoyed this and look forward to hearing the discussion in class about what you guys think, and being able to maybe kind of implement that in the way I view this topic, and just kind of getting some feedback on what it is. And I just want to say I enjoyed the semester so far. Look forward to the rest of the paper presentations. Enjoyed the class discussions and everything on the discussion board. And it's been tough being away, being on campus there in Fort Worth for the past 3.5 years. So it's different doing it like this, but I've really enjoyed it. It's, the flexibility, but also just Dr. Kikers made it available just to be able to really be able to have my questions answered through the discussion board has really helped. So appreciate it, and just want to say thank you guys, and look forward to hearing what you guys say and giving your feedback. Thanks, guys.